It's been revealed that for the past 6 months, we've been living alongside a species that has been extinct for the entire length of written history, over 12,500 years. Now, Colossal Bioscience, the same company that just made the woolly mice only a few months ago and are planning on resurrecting the woolly mammoth by 2028, have just unveiled their new pack of dire wolves that they haven't announced sooner in case they died when they were still puppies, but it seems that they're doing well, they're living healthy, and they're on a 2,000-acre reserve that Colossal has not announced the location of. So, are these really dire wolves, or are these just some strange hybrid creature that we would have never seen naturally without human intervention in the first place? Now, before I get into it, I want to say that I do not work for Colossal Bioscience. I am not even a genetic scientist, and I do not know whether this is a dire wolf or not. I am not an expert here. With that out of the way, now what are we actually looking at here? Well, Colossal Bioscience has made the claim that they have 3 dire wolves living on a 2,000-acre reserve. And this has resulted in a lot of hype, a lot of excitement, and also a lot of speculation. A lot of people wondering whether or not this animal really is the dire wolf that they're claiming it to be. And this is something that we really can't prove beyond a shadow of a doubt whether it is or isn't without actually getting this information ourselves, without getting the genome of this animal, without seeing it in person and studying how it behaved. This is something that really it's hard to prove because we've never seen a dire wolf in the wild before. We don't know how they would have acted, how they would have behaved, even what they would have looked like. So the closest thing we have are fossils and their genetic code. And for the first time in history, Colossal Bioscience has acquired the direwolf genome. They have extracted DNA from 2 different direwolf fossils, one from a 13,000-year-old tooth and one from a 72,000-year-old skull, and they've compared this DNA with the DNA of modern living relatives of the direwolf, these being the gray wolf and all of its relatives, jackals, foxes, everything we have alive today that is somewhat similar. Now, for a long time, we have thought of direwolves as being closely related to jackals, actually being closer to a jackal than an actual wolf. But Colossal Bioscience is making the claim that this is not actually the case, and the genetic sequence that they have actually shows that it is 99.5% gray wolf and less jackal. So their animal in their reserve is 99.5% gray wolf, and they have made 20 edits in this thing's genetic code to help make it appear as if it were a dire wolf. So it really isn't a gray wolf anymore, it's its own thing. That being said, the closest thing that it would be to is a gray wolf with the traits of a dire wolf. So is that really a dire wolf? Is that not? What do you want to call it? I don't know. That's something we can't really say for sure. Again, we can't know what this is because we've never seen a real dire wolf before. Now, these animals look somewhat similar to what we would think a dire wolf to look like. I know the white fur is pretty unusual. For a long time, we've thought of them as being much more tan. They do have some tan coloration around the ears, so maybe as they get older, the tan will come in clearer. For now, they're still only 6 months old. It's really hard to say. So the question of whether or not these animals are really dire wolves is still very much up in the air. And this is a problem that's going to keep appearing every time a new extinct species is resurrected or brought back from the dead. We really can't know for sure if what we're looking at is exactly identical to the original species because we don't know what it is. We've never seen that species before. There could be some slight difference here or there that totally throws the whole thing off. So this is about as good as we're going to get right now to a dire wolf. Whether you want it to be or not, whether you trust Colossal Bioscience or not, this is the closest we're going to get to one. They have not actually provided this genome to the public, which I don't know how they really would. But until we actually know for sure what they have, what they've cooked up in their lab, we really can't be sure about any of it. The nature of science requires experiments to be repeated multiple times before anything sufficient can really come from them, and this, unfortunately, is still just that. It's just an experiment, And it has to be repeated multiple times before we know that this is actually what we're dealing with. So I would really like to see another company try and sequence direwolf genomes themselves and see if maybe they can come up with a similar species. And once we've recreated that a couple of times, maybe we'll come to a final conclusion as to whether or not this really is a dire wolf. But for now, we just don't know for sure. Either way, the most important thing right now is that these animals are healthy, that they're happy, and that they're safe, because these are still real animals, and regardless of whether you think they're actually a dire wolf or not, they're still alive and they still deserve to live. So, as long as they're being taken good care of, which it seems that they have been for the past 6 months now, and they've made it all this way without much problems, regardless of how you feel about whether or not this really is an accurate dire wolf, it's still undeniable that this is a massive, massive step forward in the right direction for science as a whole. We've never really seen something quite like this happen before, and this is a big deal. No matter how you want to put it, this is still a pretty big deal. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you think this is actually a dire wolf? Is it not? Is it just something else? Do you think it's even a good idea to have dire wolves roaming around the world? And should they continue and try to make mammoths and woolly rhinos or whatever they can find? I'm just trying to get the discussion rolling on this thing because there's a lot to still unpack here. This is still very much in the early phase of coming out. And so things are bound to come out and more things are bound to change. And I look forward to keeping track of these animals, no matter what they are, and seeing how they grow and develop throughout their lives. Also, no matter what you think these animals are, it's undeniable that these guys are adorable. I mean, come on. Come on. You really gonna argue with that?